I forget how brutal this game is. If I could offer you 2 pieces of advice today, it's number 1, always bend your knees and seek assistance when carrying heavy retro equipment up 3 flights of stairs, or you could hurt your back. Piece of advice number 2, if you need PCBs, go to PCBWay.com. Today I've been looking at their shared projects and I found this little beauty for an upcoming project where I need to fix up a C64. It's a double-ended C64 cartridge in which I can put 2 EEPROMs, one for diagnostic tests and one as a dead test EEPROM. I only need to solder 6 components on and then flash 2 EEPROMs, so it really is the perfect place to start if you're looking to get your first PCB from PCBWay.com. Go and browse their shared projects, pick out what you need and pop it in your basket. PCBWay.com, they've got your back. Go and check them out. On with the show. Hello Cave Dwellers, welcome to the Cave. I bet you thought you'd seen the end of these IBM NetVistas. The charity drive that we did with them has been incredibly successful. We've raised over £3,000 for local hospitals here in Swindon. So thank you to everyone who put their hands in their pockets to raise the money and to buy the machines or to just donate on the Just Giving page. People like Reese from the YouTube channel CTRL-ALT-REES, who's been showing off his machine since it arrived, and I know he's got more videos planned in which he's going to upgrade it and take this thing to the extreme. And amazingly, Clint at Lazy Game Reviews, yes, he needs no introduction here, I'm sure you're all subscribed to him. I have no idea how this machine actually survived shipping when you look at the state of the box when it got there, but thankfully I'd wrapped it in so much bubble wrap that it did survive. And it just looked great in the setting that he put it in, and he gave us a video taking it through its paces.
Neil, you're a dork.
So a huge thank you to Reese and to Clint for putting their hands in their pocket and everyone else who's raised that £3,000. But it's not over yet. This machine is now for sale. There's a link in the description. And what's so special about it, you may be asking? Well, first of all, it's supposed to be mine. This was supposed to be my reward for all of that scrubbing. I was going to keep this one, do it up and have it as a special machine for here in the cave. Well, seeing the prices that they've sold for, I just have to sell it for charity. It makes sense to, and I'll sort myself out with another machine further down the line. The first thing you'll notice about this is I put a brand new sticker on the front because it is an Intel Pentium 3 as opposed to a Pentium 4 of the newer machines. If you watched Clint's video, you would have seen how crunchy the audio was with that onboard audio chip. I've put a Sound Blaster live card in here, which not only sounds better, it's compatible with DOS games. So you can drop out of Windows and you can play all the DOS games you like with some pretty decent sounding Sound Blaster compatible audio. But the real jewel in this crown is this card. It's the 3DFX Voodoo 2 card. I had one of these back in the day and boy did I love it. Raw 3D processing power. Back then, these cards didn't have any kind of 2D capabilities. It's coupled with the onboard VGA chip. And then we have this pass-through cable to combine the two, the 2D and the 3D. Glorious, isn't it? The full spec of the machine is on the auction listing, which you can find in the video description. So give that a click, hop over to eBay and have a read. It will ship internationally. It's not cheap to ship internationally, but the option's there if you've got deep pockets. And this represents the perfect opportunity to relive now some of those 3DFX memories. Voodoo 1 and Voodoo 2 games that I had back in the day. I've dug out a stack of them just to show you. And we can see the difference between the software rendering and the 3D hardware accelerated rendering of those Voodoo cards. So sit back, relax, grab a coffee, and let's play some games. So the first game I want to share with you from my 3DFX memories is Tomb Raider. The iconic Tomb Raider, released in 1996, and it was released before any Voodoo cards came out. The Voodoo 1 coming out in 96. We've got it in Tomb here. So originally it was software render only, and we'll look at that first of all so we can see the difference. So yeah, we had the Voodoo 1 in 1996. That was... Oh, please insert the CD. That would help, wouldn't it? So yeah, 96 is when the first 3DFX card came out. It was to do with the price of RAM dropping so that they could actually enter the consumer market with their boards. And it was fighting off the likes of Power VR and Matrix. I used to have a Matrix G200. That was a little bit later, actually, I think. It's all sort of a blurry haze now. I can't remember what graphics card I had when. But the original Voodoos were a 3D graphics card only, so you had to use them in conjunction with your existing 2D card. And I'm using the onboard graphics here for 2D, And then you've got a pass-through cable to combine the two outputs. But yeah, Tomb Raider was an interesting one because it came out on the Saturn and the PlayStation in the same year, so it actually gave us a benchmark to look at our PCs against the latest and greatest consoles of the time. Ah, there's that music. So we're just going to skip all of the intros and whatnot and get straight into the game, because it's the 3D graphics we're interested in. Oh, that's actually in the high resolution mode. It's software rendered. Doesn't actually look too bad there, but if I hit F1, I think. That's how I remember it. In fact, the camera's flickering a little bit with the refresh rate there. I won't play with it because, well, we can flick to high-res mode and it's fine there. Now, I wouldn't have been able to play it in this mode back in the day. I would have had, what, a Pentium 90? Something like that? What are the system requirements? Pentium 60 or higher, Pentium 90 recommended. It would have been like a flick book to play it at this resolution. It actually looks pretty good, even though it's software only. But we're on a Pentium 3 now. This technology didn't exist in 96. So it's no wonder that it's playing well. But as I say, this is how I remember it, and this is how I remember it on the PlayStation and the Saturn as well. It had a bit more smoothing, but it definitely had the jaggies, like you can see on here. But it was a step up. Yeah, I'm not doing the PlayStation a good service by saying it looked like a software renderer, because it did have a GPU. But let's look at the 3DFX difference. So you did have to find the 3DFX patch for it. Back then, you might have got it off the internet, but you more likely would have got it off of a cover CD on a magazine, and you just ran a different executable. That is the Tomb Raider I remember. Nice smooth edges, nice and responsive, because of course it takes such a load off of the processor, dumping all of the rendering onto the 3D card. Oh. You always find with the 3DFX games, with the early 3DFX, that because it's using that pass-through cable, everything just softens a little bit more than it usually would. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. And it seems to have got a little bit darker. We should have done the tutorial, shouldn't we? When you get to lock the butler in the fridge. I give up. I can't find the butler. But it looks good though, right? If you compared that to the PlayStation or the Saturn at the time, it was perfectly playable if you get yourself a good control pad and don't play it with the keyboard like I am. It was a groundbreaking game, and that 3DFX patch just elevated it to a level that was really hard to go back. Once you started to see graphics this clear with edges this smooth, it was impossible to go back to software rendering. And we'll see another example of that next with another one of my favourite games. Let's fire that up. So Tomb Raider was made for the Voodoo 1 cards. We've got a Voodoo 2, so we're not really pushing it to the max. And another game that was made with a Voodoo 1 patch was Carmageddon. The fantastic Carmageddon. Let's see it in software mode first of all quickly, and then we'll have a proper game of it. So a Voodoo 1 patch came out. Oh, enter the password for the uncut version. I had to put this in at installation time. I can't find my Carmageddon CD. Found it. Okay, it's streaming from the CD now. So yeah, 1997 is when Carmageddon came out. Again, it came out with software rendering and was patched a little later, and then there was a later Splat pack which came with the 3DFX patch bundled. But that was for a Voodoo 1 card. I've got a Voodoo 2 card, and support for Voodoo 2 only came about because of a rogue employee who decided to make the patch and release it. He made it in his own time, and thank heavens he did, because I loved it. After my Voodoo 1 card, I got a Voodoo Banshee, and that's when they combined the 2D and the 3D cards together to make one card, so you didn't need to have a second 2D card. So I would have used that patch with my Banshee. I think I had a Creative Labs Banshee as well, with the lovely, you know, creative box art, yellow and is it yellow and blue? So we're in software rendering mode here. I'm going to get rid of max damage just because he swears a lot. And we've got a big border. Can I make that bigger? There we go. Now again, we're on a Pentium 3, which this flies with in software mode. Has absolutely no problems rendering that. You would have been looking at something like a Pentium 166 or maybe a 200, maybe even less on the original requirements. And you can see it plays well, but you can see those jaggy edges. And those muddy textures. So let's give you the 3DFX version in comparison, and then we'll have a proper game of it. And here we are. Let's hide the sweary man again. For the 3DFX difference, hopefully you can see how much nicer that looks. We've still got a pretty terrible draw distance. We'll have to check the options actually. Let me do that now. Can we improve the draw distance? Detail. Ooh, car complexity, always. Shadows, all cars. There we go. So we can take cutoff to distance, pop up to distant. Sound detail full. That's how I remember it. This was my favourite of the series. I played Carmageddon 2 quite a lot, but 1 I played all the way to completion. There was the monstrosity that was Carmageddon on the N64. That was terrible. Anyway, the objective is to either... Oh, I've wasted someone already. Either win the race, kill all the other cars, or kill every citizen on the map, of which there are 527. And I have done that. Let's smash some cars up. I mean, whether you've got the voodoo card or not, the thing I loved about this game was the feeling of weight, the feeling of physics. Every car acted as you would expect it to according to its size. And actually this car, this early car, is it the Eagle? I want to call it the Eagle. It's not the best. You get to drive any car in the game later on. So you can get much quicker cars or much more nimble cars at turning corners. What is he doing? That's Vlad out of the game. Who else wants some? I forget how brutal this game is. One more. We've got a stalemate. He can't get out. I can't kill him down here. I think we'll call it a day on this race, but you get the idea of how good this looks. For 1997, I thought this game was phenomenal, not just because of how it looked, but how it felt, how it played. It just kept me coming back. And I think it deserves a hell of a lot more credit in the history books. So, from Carmageddon, let's move on to another game. Return to a life where you don't get internal organs in your hair. Yes, please, that does sound good. Now, the next game was a real favourite of mine. It's going back a year again to 96. It's Screamer 2. Oh no, it's not happy. My 3DFX patch is not working. I was worried this might be the case. Screamer 2 is notoriously difficult to get working with the Voodoo 2 cards. Oh, that Windows sound. Screamer 2, this isn't going to work. Oh, who enabled active desktop? I did not enable active desktop. I've got to turn that off. Where's the setting? Web. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I can't get it working. What you find with this game is, and with all 3DFX games, is there's what's called an OVL file, which is the DOS driver file for the Voodoo cards. And I've tried every OVL file I can find, from the newest going back to the oldest, and I just can't get it to launch the game. I don't know if it's my card specifically, or if it's the Voodoo 2 cards. There are sites out there where I can see people have got it working with a Voodoo 2 card. So I will persevere in the longer term, but Screamer 2 is off the menu today, which is a real shame. So those are our 3DFX games that I've been playing in DOS. But of course, as we come onto the Voodoo 2 in 97, 98, we start to move towards Windows-based games because our PCs have got the overhead. They've got the RAM to run Windows and run games on top. I've got 256 meg of RAM in here, which is ample for Windows 98 and some gaming. So let's move on to some Glide games, some Voodoo games that use the Glide API rather than DirectX in Windows 98. Okay, as Screamer didn't work, I'm going to go for a game called Viper Racing, which I don't know how many of you out there used to play this, because none of my friends used to play this. Let's put the CD in. And I actually really, really liked it. I thought it was a great game. When I didn't have access to Gran Turismo, I turned to Viper Racing. It wasn't as in-depth as Gran Turismo, but boy did I enjoy it. I probably didn't even know what a Dodge Viper was until I played this game. Sierra Sports. It's in the game. There, we got the detail up. We've got all the hardware features turned on. Everything set to high. I'm going to keep it at 640 by 480 just because the refresh rate is right with the camera. My camera has very few options. If I can't get it in sync, I can't get it in sync with the screen. Let's have a quick race. We're starting at the back of the grid. Here we go. Again, this is one of those games where taking the load off of the CPU gave the game a lot more headroom for physics. And my favourite part of this game is, if I can remember the button, this view. It had independent suspension. Every tyre, all four tyres acted accordingly. If you just got one on the grass, then it acted accordingly, which was really nice. So I liked playing it in this view. It's not the most exciting of racing games, but you could tweak your setup. You could try and eke a little bit more speed out of your car for these typically American raceways, many of them ovals. So it was just a case of trying to keep your momentum up. We've got your yellow car, gunning for that orange car. Of course, what you probably want me to do is go the wrong way round the track. I will bow to your wishes. Let's see how our graphics card handles it if we get a massive pile up going on. Let's see what we can do. This was always what we used to do in NASCAR racing. Cause the biggest pile up. It's the only reason to play that game. Who wants some? You do. Oh, he spotted me. Oh no. Is that it? I'm out of the race instantly. I've completely destroyed the car. So like I said, it's not really a fair comparison to Gran Turismo, but that was the game that set the benchmark, wasn't it, on the PlayStation? And Toka Touring Cars. Does anyone remember that, by Codemasters? That was a good in-depth racing series, the original Toka, because it carried on, and then I think it turned into Toka Race Driver or something like that. But the original one where you could race Volvo V70 estates. Now that was a game. Oh, he's controlled it. Okay, we've got a replay. We've got a replay feature of the collision. Here we go. I'm on the right-hand side. I'm going to make an appearance shortly. There he is. That's how you win races. Oh, a third one got involved. He is destroyed. So that is Viper Racing, another one of my favourite 3DFX games. I've actually got quite a lot of car racing games. I didn't realise how much I love racing games over the years. So the next game I want to play, which uses Glide in Windows, is Ultima Ascension, which is not a good game. And it makes me so sad that the Ultima series went out like this. But anyway, let's enjoy it in its full form. We need the cloth map out. We've got the spell books and the books of lore and the trinkets and everything else. The tarot cards. What have we got in our setup options? Okay, so we've got here the choice of Glide or Direct 3D because we're at that crossover point now where Direct 3D has matured, and cards are coming out to compete with the Voodoo 2. Namely, what I nearly just said there, the TNT. The NVIDIA TNT was the first card, I think, to really give the Voodoo cards a run for their money. So the Voodoo cards do support the Direct 3D API, DirectX, but we're going to stick with Glide. And we're going to have everything on. Yeah, high detail, everything. Let's go. Ultima 7 was an awesome game. Ultima 8 was a bit of a letdown. And then Ultima 9, this one, Ascension, is when they made the jump to 3D, and I can't blame them. The pressure was on everyone. Ooh, 3DFX logo. The pressure was on everyone to make that jump to 3D. So they had to do that. But what it lost was that real open world feel. Despite switching to 3D, it split the game into areas with great big loading times between each areas. And you would progress to an area and you wouldn't be able to then go back to a previous one. So you couldn't really explore the world in the way that you could in the previous Ultimas. Now this is all very lovely, but 3DFX doesn't improve our video decompression, so we'll skip that.
Avatar, arise from your slumber. The Guardian has invaded Britannia, and Lord British has summoned you
very
for
dark.
your final adventure. In order to view your surroundings, simply move your mouse. If you wish to move, press and hold the right mouse button.
Yes, what I wish to do is see if I can turn up the gamma, please. I can't jump to Windows.
Object. To use an object, the cursor will turn green if placed over the object. If you wish to use the object,
I can't see anything to click on.
For my next
Oh, I can immediately remember why I hated this. As you move around, there's huge slowdown, and that's not because of the 3D, that's because it's loading data. It's loading the objects. And this is installed straight off of the CD. There were hundreds of patches that came out for this to fix the damn thing. It was so buggy. Maybe I should have got some patches. So, I should like to turn the gamma up for that game. Let's see if we can do that. Here's our 3DFX control panel. Fine, let's turn it up to the max. See what that does. Yeah, that gamma's certainly turned up.
Avatar, arise from your slumber.
It looks terrible.
Britannia, and Lord British has summoned you for your final adventure. In order to view your surroundings, simply move your mouse. If you wish to move, press and hold the right mouse button. Surely you will not go adventuring without clothes. I think your clothes are in the bathroom through the other door. You can also use the cursor to interact with objects. When you are close enough to use an object, the cursor will turn green if placed over the...
Okay, this is as good as it's going to get. But you can see, every now and then you have moments of smoothness. Can we get a moment of smoothness, please? There, you have a moment of smoothness when you look at the toilet. Can we use that? And then it just goes clunky and blocky and horrible. And this is not to do with the machine's inability to process those graphics, it's just the awful nature of the game. And there were many, many more patches. And it did have the potential to be a great game. It just sucked. And thank goodness we had Ultima Online at the time. Ultima Online, that was the Ultima to play in 1999. Not this horrible, horrible game. Right. It was terrible then, it's terrible now, and it's doing nothing to show us that 3DFX is great. I do like the fact that we've got an Apache Longbow 2 poster on the wall over there. That's cool. Don't get sucked in, Neil. It's an awful game. Nothing is going to convince you otherwise. Next game. Now, another game which I must show you is Need for Speed Porsche 2000. This is a game I played to death back in the day. I think I'd moved on from the Voodoo cards by then because I didn't last longer than the Voodoo 2. I then moved on to the DirectX cards from NVIDIA. I think I went with the TNT 2 instead of a Voodoo 3. And again, this game does support Glide natively and Direct 3D, and we're playing it in the Glide mode. So the reason I want to play this is not just because I played it loads back in the day, but because LGR, Clint, played it on his channel when he was demonstrating the NetVista, the Pentium 4 NetVista. So it's a nice... Oh no, I haven't turned the gamma down. It'll be a nice benchmark, a nice comparison between the two machines once I fix this hideous gamma to show you what it looks like. Yeah, I've crashed that. Let's reset. Because Windows was not properly shut down, one or more of your disk drives may have an error on it. Aha, our disk survived. Let's try that again. Right, let's fix the gamma settings. Defaults, please. Thank you very much. And let's try Porsche again. A Carrera 4S. That's the Porsche I always wanted as a kid. In fact, I still want it now. If anyone would like to donate a Carrera 4S to the cave, it will be gratefully received.
3, 2, 1, go!
Here we go. That is already looking pretty smooth. So, as I say, if you've seen LGR's video, you can compare it to how it runs on this one. He was quite surprised by the performance that you got out of it, which he put down to the Pentium 4 processor, just brute force. Now, I've got a slower processor here with a P3, but I've got the 3DFX advantage. And I think that's working nicely. Oh, this car handles like a boat. Thank you, chaps. Oh no, we've lost it again. We've got a lovely draw distance there as well. This is another game I played through to completion. I didn't realise I was so hooked on driving games, and so I came back and reviewed these. Other games that I've got on the desk here that we haven't played today that support 3DFX are Colin McRae's Rally, Incoming. I think everyone who had a 3D card played Incoming. It was one of those... it was almost like a demo, wasn't it? Almost like a showcase piece. EF2000, I haven't shown you a flight sim, but EF2000, I think, was the first ever game to receive a 3DFX patch. I might be wrong, but as far as I can tell from my research, it was the very first. And it made just as big a difference as you've seen on all these other games today. Now, the final thing I want to show you that really stuck in my memory when it came to the Voodoo 2 card was the Ultra HLE emulator. Now, this absolutely blew my mind. I showed it to anyone and everyone that I could at the time, and it never failed to surprise people. It came out in 1998 at a time when the N64 was Nintendo's current console. Just imagine if that happened today. An emulator that runs their top console at full speed on a competitor's system. Now, granted, on its first release, it ran Mario 64 very well, as you'll see. It ran Mario Kart. Zelda worked pretty well, but it had lots of compatibility issues that needed ironing out. And then, of course, the legal proceedings kicked in with Nintendo chasing them down. They disappeared, basically, as you would if you had Nintendo chasing you down. So it didn't really get developed much further than this. There were some hacks and some tweaks, and the source code did make its way out. But just look at it. Full frame rate, a higher resolution than you'd actually get on the original N64. So it looked better than it did on the original console. I remember at the time we had some French exchange students over, and they thought this was some kind of witchcraft. They didn't speak any English, I didn't speak any French, but I just showed them this and watched their mouths drop. And I burned this onto a CD for them, the emulator, and definitely not the ROMs. I definitely did not give them ROMs. And they took it home and no doubt spread the word with their friends and wowed them as well. Let's get into one of the actual levels. And it's not like the N64 was built on 3DFX hardware. It didn't have an x86 processor. This was not an easy thing to emulate. They did an incredible job. And speaking of consoles, actually, the Dreamcast was originally slated to have 3DFX hardware for its graphics before they switched to Power VR. And legal wranglings happened between 3DFX and Sega. It very nearly was a 3DFX based console, and I think that would have given it a huge advantage. The Power VR card was good. It did look good. But, what it could have been. That N64 emulation looks and feels as stunning today as it did all of those years ago when I first experienced it. The machine has been running for hours as I filmed this. It hasn't missed a beat, aside from those issues with the Screamer 2 patch, but maybe with a bit more tweaking we can get that working, or you can, because it'll be your machine and it'll be your problem then. But I think it's stunning. I might even have to put a bid in myself. That'll be cheap for shipping at least. If you're interested in buying this, please click on the link. Go and put a cheeky bid in, maybe you'll win it. And if you just want to contribute in our last push to raise money for charity, then there's also a link to the Just Giving page if you'd like to make a small donation. All of the money goes to Brighter Futures, a charity which supports local hospitals in my area at a time when they really do need it. Hope you've enjoyed today's videos. Do let me know what your 3DFX memories are. What games would you have played? Did you carry on after the Voodoo 2 to the 3, the 4, the 5? Those insanely expensive and powerful Voodoo cards that came after when I'd long abandoned them. Let me know your thoughts. As always, take care and see you next time. Bye-bye. If you enjoy my content and would like to support The Cave while receiving a completely ad-free experience and access to releases 1 week before they go public, then visit patreon.com/retromancave and join the official Cave Dwellers. Thank you for your support.